Hello, everybody. Welcome to Creating Brand Cultural Relevance. I'm Lex Beckett. I'll be chairing this panel, and I've got a lovely group of people here who are super knowledgeable about all things international branding and working abroad in all the cultures. So I'm just going to give you a little rundown of what this session is going to involve. So internationally speaking, our brand can have unexpected connotations and implications. We design it as we review our business from our own business perspective and for the culture and markets that we are used to. But what happens when you project it internationally? Do certain words have different meanings? How is colour perceived subconsciously in different cultures? How do you go about meeting new contacts? What is the norm for saying hello and getting to know people? Should you expect to fit completely into the culture you're approaching? Or is there a sensible path to meet in the middle and work on a mutual cultural understanding with your new international prospects? So that's the session in a nutshell. So I'm just going to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves. So first up, Ken, can you just tell us who you are and what you do?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel indeed. My name is Ken Sturgis. I am the founder and managing partner of Transatlantic Trade Partners. We are a consultancy based in the United States, and our primary mission is to assist European SMEs identify, develop, and grow sales channels on the North American market. Thank you.
Fab. And Joe?
Hi, my name's Jo Bloxham, and I run a company called Kinfolk, which is an intercultural training provider based in Bristol. So we work with a range of clients from public sector, do a lot with universities, right through to big corporates and smaller private organisations to basically enhance people's intercultural competence. So I've been lucky enough to work in lots of different parts of the world and hope to sort of bring that out through the training and support others to kind of not make the same mistakes that I have. So my specialisms are really China and communication, intercultural communications. That could be anything from, how we connect interpersonally with somebody, face-to-face, email, online, right through to looking at sort of how we might connect through our brands and marketing and advertising. So yeah, that's me. Looking forward to today.
Fabulous. And Janina?
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me, Lex. I'm Janina Neumann. I have a business called Janina Neumann Design. I'm a bilingual German-English graphic designer and help clients make a social impact in the UK and abroad. And I've also collaborated with Eva Chile Salvador to create Local to Global, and we help clients with their marketing across different cultures, making sure that they take in consideration the linguistics and branding requirements when they export their products or services overseas.
Fab. And last but definitely not least, Sari.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, hi all. My name is Sari. I'm originally from Finland, but I've lived in the UK for 26 years, and I lived in Switzerland before I moved here. So I have some experience in living in different places. I have a company called Muutos, which empowers tech companies create an outstanding, thriving company culture. We basically help them achieve sustainable organizational and individual performance. And we help them improve productivity and talent retention by minimizing staff unhappiness and stress. And we focus on things that really matter in a workplace. We find the root causes of people challenges and we fix them for good. That's the aim. And the cultural awareness, of course, is one of the enablers for organizational performance and also staff happiness when we understand each other, employees understand each other and their clients as well. So I'm really passionate about helping people understand people and other cultures, and especially the undercurrents of cultures. So those things which we don't see, we kind of have to know them. So I'm jolly excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. And just because I don't want to feel left out, I'm going to introduce myself as well. I'm Lex Beckett and I run a company in Cheltenham, a digital agency called Squashed Robot. And we actually do work with a number of international clients also. So hopefully I won't be coming at this completely dry, but we work with clients in the US, the Netherlands, Sweden, and even Africa. And I'm actually a trustee of a charity in Africa as well. So hopefully I'll be able to not get too lost. So there are a couple of themes that I want to cover in this session really. So it's really the principles of doing business in alternative cultures. and really what businesses need to consider when taking their business to a new country. One that maybe they've not operated in before, or one that has some cultural significant differences. And then later on, I'd like to take a bit more of a deep dive into some of the specific cultural differences that we all experience, both within business and outside of business as well. And so I really think that we've got an amazing panel here. So thank you all for joining us. And if you're happy, we'll get cracking. I should also say, anybody watching this as well, we are taking questions on the YouTube and on Zoom and wherever else. You can tweet us, I'm sure. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. So do let us know if anything sounds of interest or you want any more information. So the title of this talk is Creating Brand. And I think it's quite important that first up, we talk a little bit about what we mean by brand. So it can mean different things to different people. But I'd just love to go around the room and just get your thoughts on what brand means to you. So should we change the order this time just to throw you all off? Joe, would you like to start?
Well, I guess as an intercultural consultant, I'm usually defining intercultural things, but for me, brand is quite a holistic thing. So it's the impression, it's the feelings that people will have when they have connected with our organization, our people, or our products or services. And I guess that is quite an intercultural thing, not just you're trying to see things from other people's perspectives and not stay in your own cultural bubble. So that's that would be my take. But I think they say there's as many different definitions of brand as there are brand consultants, but I'll leave it there.
That's a really good answer though. And it draws perfectly into the themes of today. So Ken, what's your take on brand?
Thank you, Lex. I would say that speaking as an American who specializes in helping European SMEs come on to the North American or the US market, branding for us, we could spend 2 days just on branding, right?
Easy.
And I would not be on that panel because branding for us in our practice starts at a very base level. Branding for us starts at your name. That's the most important. That is your billboard when you come into the United States. That is your doormat. Who are you, right? I will tell you this, and I want to make this point quite clear because it really is a base point, is when you come onto the U.S. market, we don't really care, truthfully, as traders, as importers, where the country of origin is for your product. It could be from China, it could be from the UK, it could be from the planet Mars. We don't care so much. What we care about is it meets a specific value proposition for our business. What we do care about is if your product is coming from Manchester, England, or Berlin, Germany, is that we believe we have a common cultural connection. And that starts with, where are you? Because what we want to do as American traders, as importers, is we want to work with people who who present to the market branding that they are here. So one of the first things we do with a client that comes in, we strongly encourage, is we set up what is called the DBA. It does business as a name, as Acme Limited out of Manchester now becomes Acme North America. It's a very simple instrument. It's legal. It's easy to do. We do it all the time. And so what it does, it establishes immediately, I'm sorry, Lex, it establishes immediately that you're here. You have a presence, right? And I'll leave it there, as I don't want to monopolize the panel.
I was going to say, we're definitely going to come back to this, don't worry, because I think you are right that overarching sort of fascia of a business is almost the first piece of brand that anybody's exposed to. So I think that is fascinating, and you do yourself a disservice. I would definitely have you in a brand panel as well. So Janina, what's your take on brand?
So one of the tools that I use with my clients is called the Cafera Brand Identity Prism. And I really like it because it goes quite deep into the identity of a brand. So we've got physique, so the underlying physical characteristics of your brand, the personality, the character of your brand, but also the culture. So the culture and values of the country from which your brand originates from and its demographic. And then we go on to the relationship, so the relationship between your brand and its customers, and then the self-image, so how the customers of your brand see themselves, which is so important as well, and reflection, so the brand, how the brand perceives its audience. So going into these 6 different ways of identifying what your brand is about, you make sure that you can communicate across cultures effectively.
Great. And Sari, have we done everyone? No, sorry, you're
Still,
yes. Speak about this. So what's your take on brand?
Well, I thought I'll give a kind of a consumer view. I'm very brand oriented. I've always been. When I find a brand which matches with my values, matches with what I am and how I want to live my life, I seem to stick with them. And I think Joe kind of touched the culture aspect here. And I thought brand is like a culture. So if we think about that, the culture is a set of collective values, attitudes, behaviors, beliefs that a group of people have. For me, it's the same with branding as well, because the brand, it has a set of common values. They have a certain attitude towards their own products or services or their customers, and they exhibit certain type of behavior. And they kind of, there are certain beliefs behind their products and services. And for me personally, it's I'm after the stability and the integrity and long-lasting branding instead of these pop hip, the brands which come and go. So I'm this kind of a bit of a dinosaur in that sense, but that's somehow kind of how I see the brand, and it's actually really important to me to use and buy products which I believe in, or the brand that I believe in, if it makes any sense. But that's just personally how I see it. Yeah.
That was really, really interesting from everyone, and I think the audience will be able to see quite clearly what we're saying when we say actually the definition of brand is so broad that, as someone said earlier, there are as many definitions as there are brand consultants. And so I just wanted to kind of just put that out there to contextualize what we're really talking about here. So essentially, what I'm getting from everybody is that it's the personality of a business, and whether that's seen on a business ledger or whether that's seen on some marketing materials, it all feeds into the central culture of not only the business, but the culture in which they're operating. So that was fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. So Ken, I want to pick back up on these DBAs because that sounds fascinating. So that really is kind of the starting point, really, isn't it? It's the first thing that you have to do. So can you just tell me why it's so important to have that DBA?
The importance of it is as I explained my position earlier, which is we're fairly agnostic as importers here in North America as to country of origin. However, we're very particular about who we do business with, right? Two different things. And part of our criteria is, will they be here? The United States, just the 48 continental states, it's a large landmass. You know that, right? Yeah. You all studied it in school, you know that. But to illustrate its size is you can fit 32 European countries inside the continental US, right? And that doesn't include Alaska. You want to throw Alaska in there, we can put a lot of Russia in there too. So the point of it is it's very large, it's very diverse. So in just doing business in New York, whether that's a branding concept versus Los Angeles versus Miami versus Portland, Oregon, 4 corners of the country, it's very diverse, right? What the common thread there, though, is in terms of corporate branding is, will you be there? Are you here? Are you here? Do we believe you are here to support us? Because the U.S. Geography is so large, we don't need to trade outside of the U.S. Of small SMEs. really, right? We have huge supply base within the United States. So we don't want to talk about euros or pounds, period. We don't want to use a country code. Most even business people don't know how to make an international phone call in the United States. It's a fact. So what they want is they want Acme North America country code 1, area code exchange. That's it. They want to speak with an American speaker, not an English speaker, a native speaker, right? And they want to be supported. They want to feel that they're supported on a local level. This is critical. The one, and this gets into cultural issues, so I can save some of that. But the other thing is about the American business culture is that we're fast. We are lightning fast. We are faster than you by 10 times. And most Europeans conceptualize that, but in practice, they have no idea how fast we operate. And we will leave you at the altar in a heartbeat if you cannot respond to us. That's how it goes. I can't impress that enough. And so part of the branding, getting back to that, is letting the US market, the North American market, know you're here. And so a DBA in a very simple terms it just means does business as. So I have a corporate identity with the United States government. And so when you come to the United States, you have some choices around that. You can also have a corporate identity with the United States government, and that's how they track you for taxes. That's really the only reason they care. You're here. They need that function, right, is on the revenue side. And that's why I have an S corporation in the United States. But I can bring over SMEs who just want to sample the market before they put their own brick and mortar, until they bring their own corporation into the United States as a DBA, a does business as. What that means is there's a process here internally in the States, and it's some form filling out. There's some small fees, and I mean small, hundreds of dollars. And then they can trade DBA as Acme North America is this example. And this is a very important, this for us from a pure branding perspective, it is the cornerstone. And I would say also this for the panel and for our audience's benefit, we do not work in consumer goods, that we only deal in commercial and industrial sectors. So our branding scheme, philosophy, practice is very different from a consumer good, a Nike, an Apple, whatever, a yogurt company, right? So we are commercial industrial. That branding looks very different from consumer product.
So if I was thinking about taking my business into North America, what would the first step be?
The first step is, and this goes back to really the core issue of, do you want to do business in America? And so a lot of people we talk to say, yeah, of course we want to do business in America. It's fun, it's exciting, it's sexy, it's dynamic, a lot of growth. Those things are all true, all true. The better question is, are you prepared to do business on the American or North American market? And you better get real honest with yourself before you answer that question. Because if you're not prepared, we will eat you up and spit you out and not think twice about it. And you will go home with a bloody nose, and you will hate American business people, and you will never do business in America again because you had a bad experience, right? So if you want to do business on the US market, you better make sure you have enough worldview. If the US market is your first major export market, wait, go try some other countries first. I mean that. If you don't have a proper worldview, you're not going to get the way we do business, period. And we're not going to change for you. Our core tenet to our clients is, we cannot change the market, period, for you. We can only help you adapt to the US market. That's just how it goes. So, I literally could do 2 days on this subject, but I won't. But the first thing is really getting real with yourself. In part of that realism is you better realize you need help. Do not try to go it alone. That's my advice. Either hire within or find someone here that can help you. And two is do not expect to come to the US or the North American market and be successful in 1 year. You can have some success in 1 year. You cannot hit the home run ball in the first year. It's a 1, a 3, and a 5-year strategy, period, every single time. Our average client length is about 3 years. So we take them from the beginning. In a perfect progression, we take them from a build, operate, transfer. So at that last point, the transfer piece, they become their own corporate entity in the United States. So I think that's enough for me on this. I don't want to turn this into...
Well, no, that is really, really, really interesting, actually, because I think, that sense of, well, actually, you've got a lot of learning to do before you embark on this. And really, and in one of the most seamless segues of the day, we've got a lot of decisions to make. And so, Sari, I want to hear a little bit from you about how working internationally in other cultures affects your approach to decision making.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was fascinating, Ken, what you said. That's one of the things I was thinking about pointing out is this a different speed, different approach to risk taking almost, and safety, security, and certainty that the different cultures have. And I thought, if I list through these characteristics of different cultures, which I need to keep in mind when I even start thinking about which markets do I want to approach, B, how I'm going to start approaching those markets, how am I going to approach the certain companies, and how am I going to approach those decision makers in the companies, and whether I need to build personal relationships to start with before I actually start selling and trying to start influencing their buying decisions. How am I going to create my proposals, and how am I going to present my proposals? What sort of resistance I'm expecting? And all those aspects are being influenced by cultures, because the different cultures have a different approach to these things. So decision making, for example, the more individualistic cultures, the decision making tends to happen on a lower level. So the lower level managers, they have responsibilities and they have powers to make decisions. They can make quick decisions, or the decision making can be quicker because it's that one individual who can just, decide what they want to do, which is good in a way for me because I know where I stand with them quicker. But the hindsight of that type of culture is that as people tend to be more equal with each other, those decisions, although they were made quickly, but they can be questioned more. So it might be that the decision has been made, but then either the other managers or employees or higher level managers, they start questioning those decisions and we get stuck. So we might get a bit forward with the deal or a bit forward with the project, but then actually we might get stuck because those decisions are being questioned. Then we have this kind of more collective cultures. When I deal with them, then the decisions can take longer to come through, or it takes longer for them to make decisions because they might seek some consensus. So they might be seeking more opinions. But then those decisions, although they are slower to come about, but then they kind of stick because there have been so many people making the decisions. So once we get going, we get going. So there are not too many changes. So that's one really important aspect. And again, it's for me to realize that sometimes these things take longer, sometimes they happen quicker, sometimes it's very firm decisions, sometimes I need to prepare to be quite flexible because things might change. And another really important aspect is the different approach cultures have when it comes to that risk-taking, uncertainty and assurances. So I lived in Switzerland and I have been working a lot with Germany, especially when I worked for Hewlett-Packard for all those decades. And those risk-avoiding cultures, then of course, when I start approaching them, I really need to present cultures and order, structures and order and rules. I need to have detailed plans and I need to have proper risk assessments and contingency plans, and I need to have it very well thought through, because those cultures, they really want to play safe. They want to avoid the uncertainties and they always aim for stability and security. Then when I work with the US, well, when I used to work for Hewlett-Packard, I definitely know what Ken was talking about, this quick decision and moving, and it's that speed which is happening. So then, of course, if I was to deal with the clients in the US, then of course I need to understand that things don't need to be so firmly defined. Issues are being tackled when they appear, and workarounds are being invented as and when, if things don't kind of go as we were planning them to go. Timelines can be more flexible. They are not so rigid because it's all kind of more floating and more flexible. And we are after innovation, speed of change, achievements, progress. It's this. So again, it's understanding that they some cultures that they can be totally opposite, totally different. But I need to be prepared. I need to prepare myself accordingly, and I need to set my own expectations accordingly, so that I kind of I don't freak out when I suddenly start getting totally different responses and decisions and so on from the different clients. And then it's this whole business relationship stuff, because again, some cultures are very relationship driven. So we talk about the southern, like South Europe and Latin America and Middle East. So they really, I need to have much more gentle approach, this much more personal approach, and almost like have a much longer term vision and the business relationship that I try to build with them. And it's almost like building that trust, so that I need to build that trust. I need to be trustworthy in order to be listened to. It's almost that sort of thing. And then again, if we think about the Scandinavia or the UK or the US, they are much more task driven. So it's not so much of a personality, but it's the stuff. What are you going to do to me or for me, and how are you going to do it, and what are you going to deliver? So then again, that kind of differs. And me being a female, in some cultures, the attitude towards authority and who is respected and who is not, and what is your merit, and are you worthy enough for me to listen to you? I need to take that into account as well, because some cultures, people are treated more equally. Some cultures, they emphasize on the age or seniority or experience, whereby coming from the Finnish culture, for example, the qualification and education is everything. You need to have those letters behind your name, and you need to have those, you need to prove that you know what you say you know. So I find it absolutely fascinating that there are all these different characteristics within these different cultures. They are those things which are underneath that water level. We talk about the culture being like an iceberg. So we have the part which we can see and we can feel, which is very obvious to some extent. But then we have this undercurrent, which basically is something which you can learn, but I don't think you can ever become native, with this deeper stuff. Like, I've lived in the UK for 26 years and I feel like I'm more Brit than I'm a Finn, but I'm not quite, because in my heart, I'm still a Finnish person, and my core values and more culture, it's that Finnish culture, if it makes sense. But I think for me, just to summarize, is that how does working internationally change my decision making? It changes it hugely, because I need to, if I want to do things well and I want to be successful, I really need to consider so much, from the very beginning of my approach to a client throughout the whole relationship and when it comes to a closure. So yeah, that's what came to my mind. I hope it made sense.
That was brilliant. No, that really kind of reinforces what Ken was saying as well about that sense of actually information is vital. You know, it's that you have to arm yourself with the tool of knowledge before going into these cultures. And actually, do you have any advice on you know, how people can arm themselves with those kinds of information? Because best will in the world, we won't have time to cover every country in this session. But is there anything that you kind of look for first when you're going into a new country, or you know, what do you try and learn first?
I think for me, it's difficult to say. I think basically all those things that I just mentioned. And I was thinking about, you know, where do I start getting that information? What are the sources where I can start learning it from? And I was thinking about that. The culture is weird because if you come and ask me that what is Finnish culture, I can't explain it because I live it. If somebody comes and asks me what is British culture, I might be able to say something, but I don't really know because I live it. It's like, what do they say that fish, you know, fish can't describe the water because they don't know anything else but water or something like that. And I think it's almost like the best way is to go to the source, some you know, good literature or those experts who are experts on cultural things, instead of, because at one point I was thinking about, no, what about if I just approach some people who live there so they can explain how they think and do, but that's exactly when they may not actually know how to describe it even. But Joe is the expert.
I was going to say it'd be really interesting to hear Joe's take on this. So Joe, I understand you've done a lot of work in China. So that's quite, again, a contrast to the things that Sarah's just talked about. So you give me some examples of how you might sort of do that.
I think, you know, obviously I'd like everyone to dedicate their lives to cultural knowledge, but people have businesses to run. And I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Especially if you're an SME, micro enterprise, you've got to be good at HR, accounting, law, everything. So I think some simple kind of hits are just keep connecting with lots of people, because you'll never, as Sari says, you know, even if you want to focus just on one market, it's really hard to get that really in-depth knowledge. So keep connecting, use things like local trade associations. So here in the Southwest, you know, I'll probably talk about China at some point. I always do. You know, I belong to the West of England and Bristol China Bureau. There you've got a whole host of people who've got lots of different expertise. Do things in your spare time that are fun. If you like reading, then read from that particular culture, because all of that will help you build your general knowledge. You know, you'll never have that native expertise, but I would work on both those levels. So follow people on social media. So for example, you know, my Chinese is not fluent, so I can't access everything I want to in China. So I use some sort of channels to help me do that. So if anyone else is interested in China, people like Dow Insights, Arnold Ma, feel free to get in touch. I can give you a kind of list of people that I think are really useful, and they're really good at feeding you, you know, what are these companies doing at the moment, what's working, what's not, and that really helps. And then there's old-fashioned things. So if you're suddenly going out on I know hopefully you're not, because we're all talking about planning and preparing and really doing your homework and your due diligence, but there are very simple guides. Like there's one I would recommend, I'm not on commission, I promise, which is called Culture Smart. They are, you know, small booklets, and you have to take them with a bucket of salt, to use some very bad sort of British English that's mashed up. But, you know, don't believe everything it says, but at least it's a starting point. It's a way to have conversations with people that you then connect with. So I think there's lots of things we can do, but I think, we know, when you're an SME, you have to be kind of realistic. So, you know, following people on LinkedIn, for example, is a really easy, free, which is important thing to do. I don't know if that's helpful. I hope so.
That's fantastic. And I love putting it in simple terms that even I can understand. I can go and follow somebody on LinkedIn right now. And so that's accessible. You know, I like to start with small steps. I'm going to come back to you in just a second, because I definitely want to hear a bit more about China. But in the meantime, Janina, I just want to talk to you a little bit about how we actually go about communicating into other cultures. You know, what kind of considerations do you have when trying to portray a message to another culture?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. It's so interesting to learn about your perspectives. From my point of view, I think of communication, it's about generating your idea. So it's in your own mind, with your own knowledge and experience, but also your own perspective. So if we think about marketing in the UK, we might actually go and talk to someone else to see what their perspective is on. And I think it's also important to consider that when you go to different cultures, because some cultures might be quite low context. So that means that they communicate in quite a direct manner. So this is the problem that we solve, this is how we do it, and please contact us. But others might be a bit more high context, so they might be more indirect. So that's usually also means that they want to form a relationship with you. And I think that's really important to consider that when you, for example, also write an email, like how formal is your email? How informal is your email? What if they wrote a really formal email, lengthy email to you, and you responded in quite a short, informal manner? You might not realize, but they might feel, oh, this person isn't taking me serious enough. And that might also already change the relationship a bit before you've even had a conversation. So I think that's when it's really useful to understand kind of the generalizations of that culture about how they communicate. But also, for example, I've been speaking to someone in Indonesia, and it was really interesting because he started to adapt in a more manner that I was used to. So for example, being a bit more direct. And I just find it really interesting. Because that person might also adapt to your styles. So just by meeting one person, you might not be able to generalize about what that culture is like. But it's connecting with people and having those experiences is where you get that knowledge from, I'd say.
And if you're creating a piece of branding or anything like that for a business that works across different cultures, how do you approach that? Do you recommend different pieces of design for different cultures, or is there a way that we can unify it all into the middle and have one brand that works for multiple cultures?
So I think it's really important that you have your core brand values, and they're communicated in different ways. So for example, if you take the Google study 0 Moments of Truth, which says that before a prospect will contact you, you need 7 hours of engagement, 11 different touch points in 4 different locations. Okay, so often we go and think, okay, well, I'm registered on Google My Business and I have social media platforms, but then you start to think, okay, does the region that you want to enter have access to these platforms? Is it even on the high priority list? And that's where it's really important to consider kind of the channels that you're using and also the marketing outlets. So I think it's really important to have that strong brand identity, but also double check when you enter a region to make sure that the brand name isn't offensive, because you might not realize that it might mean a different thing. And if it is the case, you could always have a sub-brand and communicate in that market that way and reach other people.
You ever had any kind of moments where you were really surprised by one of those cultural differences, where maybe you've done a piece of work and it's been received in a way other than what you expected? Or can you give me an example of that?
Yes, for example, here in the UK sometimes there are some companies that are called a specific name, and they're quite well-known companies. I won't say who they are, but I have some people who are from the Middle East, and they say this is actually a really rude word, and I can't believe that they're called like that. So even, in the UK, obviously how they have a different background, you already have that feedback about what it could mean. And I was quite surprised by it, because to me, that's like a last name.
Wow. So it really can, I mean, what a great way to kind of link right through back to what Ken was saying there about the name being almost that first essential thing. And there's more to it than where that name is based or having roots in the country. It also probably shouldn't insult your potential clients. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
So I want to jump over back to Joe and just talk a little bit more about China, really, because I know things like color have quite large cultural significance in the East and in a lot of different countries. But could you just give me a few examples of where that's been really apparent to you, or where you've seen somebody trying to communicate in one of those cultures and, I mean, let's just say it, and messed it up. Let's start with the
you
back.
want the bloopers.
give me the dirt. Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting to think about sort of surface things like color. So for example, you know, I'm sure everyone has noticed if they go to Chinese restaurants or they are studying kind of marketing or advertising in China, there are, you know, red has a big presence. So in nearly every context, that's a very positive color that people celebrate with, you know, very positive things, weddings and celebrations. And but having said that, I think we have to be a little bit careful. Arnold Ma, who I follow a lot, as I just mentioned on social media, will say, you know, Chinese people don't want everything in sort of red and gold. They would sometimes like a break. So I think it depends about what are you trying to communicate? Are you trying to do something traditional? Are you trying to look a bit edgy? What are you trying to communicate? So I think there's some really interesting things around colour. An example of a kind of recent blooper, maybe I'll mention the names of the companies that have done well and not the ones that haven't.
I think that's
but
wise.
Let's say a major fashion brand has just launched kind of range for the new year, the year of the ox that's coming in China. And they've kind of, according to some netizens, you know, Chinese netizens, they're getting a couple of things wrong. One is they've put a symbol of an ox to celebrate the year of the ox. That's great in that they're trying to connect with those traditional features of Chinese culture, but it's not a very cute ox apparently from some people's perspective on social media. It's a bit of an ugly ox, whereas Apple, I'll say the positive, has kind of, you know, as always, they're kind of getting it right. Well, not as always, but they're pretty much getting it right. So they've done a combination of their Apple logo with a really cute little ox face. And that's been for a particular launch of a kind of limited edition earpods. And that seems to have been received really well. And if we look at the popularity of anime, even with adults in China, the whole kind of running thread of cuteness, you know, I'm sure we've all, if we've traveled to the Far East, we've seen Hello Kitty everywhere. That, you know, it's called cut-eye. Cuteness is a big thing. So they, you know, people are getting it right and they're getting it wrong. And the other thing that went a bit wrong with a fashion brand was the sort of check pattern that they used has slightly resembles the bags that Chinese people would associate with kind of those big market bags. I'm sure a lot of us have got them in our lofts, you know, with the checks, and that has kind of had a cheap connotation. Now, whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. So that would be an example of bloopers. And I think, as Janina was saying, the language is so interesting. So not only can you get it wrong by having a rude name, as Janina's highlighted, and there's lots of examples of even European things going very wrong with car names and things like that. But in China, there's some really good examples of positives, how companies have cleverly not just avoided negative stuff, but have really embraced that culture and language, and therefore have been able to communicate more than they would in a Western environment. So of course, it's companies like Coca-Cola who kind of get it right. So when they first went to China, I understand in the absence of having a Chinese name, and very quickly Coca-Cola thought, we don't want this. And there was a few funny little examples of small sellers trying to come up with a name that sounded like Coca-Cola, but the meaning was quite tragic. So they have cleverly looked at Coca-Cola, use 4 Chinese characters, which basically means can, mouth, can, happy. So in drinking Coke, there's this whole sensation, oral sensation going on. So they've cleverly communicated that by really thinking about the language, because there were a number of, you know, lots of ways that you could have created that brand name. And yet in a way that says so much more to a Chinese customer than Coca-Cola does to me. I mean, obviously there are other associations from my historical connection with that brand that will mean more, but not through that actual language. So we can use language in really, really positive ways if we access that knowledge. And my other favorite example, you just have to tell me to shut up, Lex. So
No, that's fine. I'm loving this. Give me the dirt.
Is I'm going to go to Japan now. So looking at Kit Kat, the success of Kit Kat. So anyone that's traveled to Tokyo may have had the pleasure. I have not yet had the pleasure of doing this, but you know, we'll have seen these shops that are dedicated solely to Kit Kats. And one of the reasons that Kit Kats has taken hold in Japan is its meaning. So Kit Kat sounds a bit like Kitu Katsu, which apparently means, I don't speak Japanese, but apparently means, you know, you will win. You are likely to win. So it has this really positive association, so much so that apparently sales of Kit Kats in Japan peak in January when Japanese students are doing entrance exams, I understand.
Wow.
And people have even created Kit Kats that you can post. You put a stamp on your Kit Kat and you can post it to a student who's about to do their exams. They've messed with the flavors. It's all very exciting. So you can see how, you know, if you do have that access to that knowledge of language and culture, it really can give you so many opportunities to connect with people in a completely different part of the world.
That's
So, yeah,
fascinating. And
lots of interesting examples. Yeah.
something that we've not really touched on at the moment. I mean, it's got a bit of a strange connotation, but the idea of cultural appropriation. And so, not necessarily as scary as it sounds, but that sense of actually not losing your own identity. Because I know some of the work that I've done in Africa, every single corner shop has a hand-painted Coca-Cola logo on it. And they're not in any way endorsed by Coca-Cola, but that brand identity, actually, they elevate themselves by associating with a Western brand. Have you got any experiences of that? And by all means, for the rest of the panel to chip in, I'm just really quite interested if ever there's a benefit to being from a different culture. That went like a lead balloon, didn't it?
I was just thinking about the whole Scandinavian boom which we are going through. I mean, it's the Nordic noir or whatever it's called. The kind of the crime programs, and the IKEA clear, clean, precise Scandinavian design. I think that's it. It's exactly the same thing all over the world, and that sells because it's exactly the same thing all over the world, almost type of thing. And whether it's a good thing or bad thing, but the big hotel chains, wherever you go, Hilton is Hilton, and all the Hilton rooms are Hilton rooms. And so again, I think those are the examples where the brand stays, regardless of where the market is or where people are actually using it. I don't know if it made sense, but that just kind of came to my mind now.
And Janina, I think you've got something to add there.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting if you think about how people integrate into different cultures. So I've lived here for most of my life in the UK, but I'm originally from Germany. And I think to have a balanced sense of identity is not about losing your roots. It's actually about having both cultures as part of your identity. And I was reading that, for example, McDonald's has a really strong brand identity, but they ask local teams to create special meals that is attractive for the local culture. So the specials might differ in India compared to France. And I think that's really important to actually, before you go global, to actually realize what your local brand is and realize that actually that's part of your identity as well. So I think that's really interesting how different ways of communicating your brand comes into play that way.
And this goes back to something that Ken was saying earlier about the sense that actually you're not pretending that you are based in the US when you've got one of these DBAs. It's about saying that you have a presence in that country. And if I understood you correctly, actually the fact that you came from abroad is neutral. There's no negative or positive connotation. Have you got anything to add to that, Ken?
This is a fascinating discussion. It's a great panel, and Lex, you're doing a great job keeping us on track, which is quite an achievement, young man.
I'm trying.
There's a lot of things here, but I would tell you, specific to your question, a really classic example of this is Germany, which is one of our largest geographies. We do more business with German clients than any other historically and currently, and I see it moving forward in the future. And the reason is, there's lots of reasons, of which I won't bore you with, but one of them is that they're very precise, they're risk adverse, and they're long-term. They play the long game. We love all those things because we understand it, because we understand how they communicate. There was a lot of talk about culture and language earlier, right? If you want to learn how to talk to someone, talk to someone. That's it. It's that simple. We're launching in Poland in a big way. In fact, we've put an office in Warsaw. We're so bullish on it. The only way we figure Poland, how different can it be? It is extraordinarily different, right? Than Germany. They share a common border. Germany is extraordinarily different than Holland. They share a common border. Those three countries could not be more different in their business culture and their approach. Janina brought up a great point. High context, low context. What are we, right? You want to find that out, you can go online, talk to people. The cultural map is my book. If anyone who wants to get an international business, I say, buy the cultural map. That's the book. That's the handbook, because that will teach us. This is a tool that we can use to learn, are we high context, medium context, or low context communicators, right? In the United States, we're low context. What does that mean? It means we assume we don't have much in common, right? Oddly enough, that's what it means, right? So what it means is our commonality is business. And because it's business, we want to talk about business. So we would like to be friends with you in business, but that's not important. That's a benefit. If we want to do business together, that's the first objective. Everything else is downstream from that. In other cultures, it's very different, very, very different, right? So I know I'm all over the place, but as far as the branding is concerned, like, for instance, when you think of Germany, right? Precision engineering, quality manufacturing, that's true. It probably means more to Germans in reality than it does to Americans now. It's just a fact. I think it had more cachet 25 years ago. No offense to anyone on the panel or in the audience, but there is a perception, because it's based in reality, that German engineered, precision engineered, German quality manufacturing means something. So when we launch a German client on the US market, we want to speak to that, right? Because we're in commercial industrial sectors, we don't do some of this, we don't, because we're not in consumer products, our branding message is much more straightforward. It's like if you go to a big trade fair in Dusseldorf, where there's 16 halls or something, right? When I walk a trade fair, I want to be able to look on both sides of the aisle, because I'm a low text communicator, and I want to know what you do. I want to know what you do, and I want to be able to do that in 5 seconds. If you want to be on the American market, you want to have a successful brand, you want to tell the American market what you do in 5 seconds. You do that, I'm interested. You do that, okay, it's nice, but it's really not what I'm interested in, right? So we take what we have to work with, right? Which is your unique value proposition, right? Sometimes that's hard to find. Let me tell you, it just is. But we do our best to find a unique value proposition. From that unique value proposition, we plug in stuff. Scandinavian, the Nordic countries have some cachet right now, right? For various reasons, as Sari pointed out. So we try to find those elements, right, that we can plug into a brand. And while we do commercial industrial sectors, that doesn't mean we're not playful. In that world, playful goes a long way. Because if you're Coca-Cola and you're Nike and you're Apple, you got to be playful all the time. You got to be creative off the chart. You got to be Manhattan creative every day, right? Commercial industrial, we're dealing with a lot of just boring business guys. You show a little creativity, you bring a little creativity to the party, you're a hit, man. They don't want you to leave the party, right? So a little goes a long way. And so we understand that.
And what's your take on that, Joe? Because that must be quite the contrast to the East.
I'm just sort of thinking really about this kind of cultural appropriation still, and for me it's like trying to focus on that cultural appreciation. And I think we all know when we're being sold to, and actually when a brand actually really connects with us, that feels completely different. So if I'm a Chinese consumer and I see a Western company trying to use a color range, okay, they've done something, but it's not very exciting. But if they come in and show they understand one of the challenges of being a Chinese person who's 20 to 30 years old at the moment. So for example, there's this thing called 996 in China where people describe their lifestyle in that way. So I work 9 till 6 every day, 6 days a week. So there's lots of number things that go on in China, and that's one of the examples. And for example, Airbnb have really shown a whole range of kind of understanding of people's current challenges by communicating through their brand. So they've tried to for example, talk about Chinese New Year. If you look at some of their recent advertising campaigns, talking about, traditionally young Chinese people at Spring Festival would have gone home for Chinese New Year. That was like one of the biggest human migrations on the planet. But now they're so busy that they can't take that time off from work. So it's this kind of reverse celebration where parents are coming to visit them. And of course, Airbnb have said, right, we see an opportunity here, so you can rent your neighbour's house and come and see your child. So it's really up to date. It's really contemporary. Now, of course, these big companies have those resources, but having that knowledge has meant they've been able to really leverage a kind of connection with consumers that's beyond sort of superficial things. So I think, I think people can tell when that cultural appreciation is really deep and genuine, and when it's just a kind of token gesture.
Appreciation is a much better word than appropriation.
I think it's kind of a spectrum, isn't it? Appreciation, appropriation.
Well, I think something that's quite interesting for me is, I mean, we've been aware of Hello Kitty for, God, since the 80s probably, but, what's happening more and more is anime is getting more and more popular in this country, and on the film work that we do, it's referenced more and more all the time. And actually fashion, Asian fashion is huge in this country now. And so I suppose that's kind of what I was getting at in it's not always a negative to be from a different culture. And sorry, just quickly, I think you've got something to add in there as well.
Yeah, it was actually what Ken said, and this might be a bit off the topic, but I think, Ken, you were talking about the German mentality and the engineering and all. And I worked a lot with Germany when I was working for Hewlett-Packard, so I was basically their account manager. So I was between the client receiving the IT services and the provider who was providing the IT services. And really, what I learned from that role and working with Germany was that even if you need to deliver very bad news, but when you deliver those bad news with very well-informed, you keep them informed very well. So you are precise with your delivery. You have investigated the problem and you are telling what the problem is, and you have planned how you are aiming to resolve the problem. So even if the problem is bad, but when you deliver it in that precise way, it is very well received and very much appreciated. So there is that precision, whereby in some other cultures, you need to, again, it goes to, you need to adjust your own behavior and deliver it towards the culture. But there was this precision with the German business, but then there was this amazing playfulness as well. Again, what Ken mentioned, that there are these two aspects whereby I was privileged to be part of some of the celebrations or social activities, and they were just absolutely astonishing. So then again, it's even when it comes to branding, you think about it, partly it needs to be very static and of high value and very trustworthy, and however you would describe it. But then when you understand the culture, you can add that playfulness into that branding or that product or service as well. So that was just what came to my mind.
That's fascinating, and I can't quite believe it, but this hour's flown by, and we are sort of drawing towards the end. But just before we kind of wrap things up, I'd just love to kind of go around the room and really just kind of give that one key takeaway. What is it that people should really put at the front and center of their minds when they are looking at working internationally and with other cultures? So Ken, would you like to start?
I was dreadfully afraid you were going to call on me first.
We can come back. It's
question.
Do you want a sec to think? We can move off.
No. I should know the answer, right?
We've got a German to the side of you here, so she's obviously very well prepared.
Listen, the biggest thing is to understand the decision you're about to make, right? And so because we specialize in helping European manufacturers come onto the U.S. market, it is such a monumental business decision for most businesses. And we deal with SMEs, not are very small, but we deal with some that are medium sized and some that are on the larger side in the hundreds of millions, right, in turnover. And they still view the U.S. market as fear is the number one trade barrier, number one. We could talk about tariffs, Brexit, we could talk about anything else, anything. Fear is the number one trade barrier to in life, right? Really, at the end of the day, right? But coming onto the US market, it's fear, right? And so what's the antidote to fear? The antidote to fear is information, right? So do not come on the US market. Do not engage us, period, until you've done some work. Understand what the American business culture is. Talk to Americans. Come visit us. We're happy you're here. Really, come to some trade fairs, do some work. Then when you have some confidence, right, we start to take away the fear, then you're in a better mindset to make a better decision. That's what I would say.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you, Ken. And Janina, what's your kind of the key takeaway that you want people to leave here knowing?
I would just reflect on how well your brand is known locally first, because if you've established a good local presence, then you really understand the brand and kind of what you want to achieve. Whereas if you go global straight away, you might be influenced by different experiences or advice, and then you might not steer the brand in the right way. So you might not position yourself as that market leader. So that would be my advice.
That's great. Be true to yourself. I love that. And Joe, what's your main piece of advice?
I think I would really follow on what Ken's in that, do your work, do what you can, follow people, read, research, talk, connect, all of that stuff. And I guess the other thing is just, don't assume that everyone's like you. We all like to think we're normal. Unfortunately, none of us are. We're all beautifully different. We can always connect with other human beings, but we're beautifully different. So let's appreciate that.
I love that you mentioned being human there as well, because I think we often forget that actually we are a common species, and there are commonalities of the way we like to be treated and made to feel, isn't there? And I think it's very easy in business to lose sight of the fact that our clients are hopefully all human. And again, last and definitely not least, Sari, what's your key takeaway for the audience?
Well, exactly. We are all human beings. We all function in the same way, but at the same time, we are all different. And I think it's acknowledging that although we are all the same species, but we are all different. All the countries are different. But these similarities and these differences, they are both important, and that there are multiple ways of interacting and understanding and managing. And something what I have written down up on my wall is that misunderstandings arise when I use my meanings to make sense of your reality. And it's that I picked it up from somewhere, and I thought it's brilliant, because it's all about, I see the world my way, you see the world your way. So how are we going to kind of see the world in the same way? I think that's the quite romantic summary, I guess, from me.
I think that is a profound and wonderfully adept summary to this session. I think that really does kind of put everything that we've been talking about into context. And now for anybody watching, if you're like me, I could genuinely talk to these guys all day long, and I'm just, we're officially running over now, but I'm sure if you want more information, we are all on LinkedIn. We've all been CC'd into the posts for these. You can rewatch this video and just get in touch. I think I'm happy. Is everybody happy to be in touch on LinkedIn? I think that's fair to say.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. That has been fascinating, and I will be bending your ears in weeks to come, because this is just brilliant, and we could just do another hour easily. I don't doubt that at all. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching if you are at home, and yeah, look forward to the next one.